Explain that.
Sure. I think the main modus operandi of the Antichrist is going to be what I call legalized lawlessness.
So, Rabbi, you are even exploring the use of artificial intelligence as part of the Antichrist system. Explain.
Sure. I think we need to realize there's not just a main Antichrist, but there's a whole Antichrist system that will be developed to control and manipulate humans. And we even see right now in China, they have a social credit score where, like in America, you have to have good financial credit to borrow money. Well, there they monitor all your social behavior, and you can literally be blocked out of having a passport. Over 11 million people in China have already been denied airline tickets, train tickets, because they're all being monitored with hundreds of millions of AI cameras with facial recognition. And there's even a candidate in New York running for president who wants to implement that here. And then we have these breaches where, many people want to see if they're Jewish, right? And so they do this DNA testing. Right. Well, I have just found out recently that the government is working with the DNA testing site, and they're giving them access to all the DNA so that when they want to find a suspect, to narrow down who their relatives are.
You talk about, I want to concentrate on specific behavior rather than specific names for Antichrist.
Sure.
Explain that.
Sure. I think the main modus operandi of the Antichrist is going to be what I call legalized lawlessness. And what I mean by that, it's a pattern. It's a historical pattern. In Haman, with the book of Esther, they felt like, okay, let's just make it a law to commit genocide and kill all the Jews. That makes it okay. Well, what do we have today but legalized abortion, legalized drugs, legalized? They feel like if they just legalize it, that will make it okay. And so that's where the deception's going to come in.
An example of a type of the Antichrist is the opposite of what most Christians would pick. Rabbi Mark says Solomon is a type of the Antichrist. How did you come up with that conclusion?
In Revelation, it talks about the number of a man, okay? And it says, here is wisdom, and then it brings out 666. Do you know the only place in the Bible where wisdom is connected to 666 is King Solomon? It says that's how much gold came into him every year, was 666 talents of gold.
I never thought about that.
And everything that God commanded the king to do, Solomon did not do. God told the kings, and this is 500 years before Solomon. They'd already gone through Saul and David. And it said that the king was not to multiply wives. What did he do? The king was not to marry strange wives. The king was not to multiply silver and gold. The king was not to multiply horses. Did you know Solomon was an arms merchant? What would happen today if Netanyahu was selling nuclear material to Iran? That's what Solomon was doing. The modern day tank was the horse and the chariot. He would go down to Egypt, it says, buy the horse and the chariot, and then he would sell it to the Hittites. He would be selling it to the enemy. Solomon, most people don't realize, was the first person to do child sacrifice. He's the one who initiated child sacrifice by building the idols to Molech, okay, Milcom, and Chemosh, and his wives that he had children with offered those children to Molech.
Most of us think of Solomon as just a wise king. But his ending wasn't too wise.
No, it wasn't at all. And when most people think of wisdom, the one thing they think of is he offers to cut the baby in half.
Right.
Well, we know Israel is God's son. And in the last days, this wise Solomon is going to try to cut the nation of Israel in half, cut the baby in half again.
Very interesting. Very briefly, tell me about why you see patterns in the Bible repeating as opposed to, well, it's already happened, so we can forget that prophecy, especially in the feasts.
Yeah, well, the thing is this. When it comes to the feasts, we need to understand that they were called convocations. Now, in Hebrew, the word's mikra, but it implies a dress rehearsal. In other words, every year they would do the rehearsal of killing the Passover lamb on Passover. And they would do it at the time of the evening sacrifice. This is why Yeshua died on Passover at the time of the evening sacrifice. He was buried on unleavened bread. He rose on the Feast of First Fruits. The Spirit of God was poured out on Shavuot or Pentecost. Peter said, well, it's the third hour of the day. These guys can't be drunk. Well, that's the time of the morning sacrifice. And so we see the pattern in Ecclesiastes 1:9. God said there's nothing new under the sun. That which has happened is that what will happen again. And so we need to look at the patterns.
Yeah, you know, there's a view called preterism that's kind of sweeping Christianity. The book of Revelation is already done. But give me that verse again from Ecclesiastes, and you listen to this.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes 1:9. It says, that which has happened is that which will happen again. There is nothing new under the sun. In the first epistle of John, he is saying, we know we are in the last times, okay? And there have been many antichrists. So we need to realize there's been many antichrists. There's an antichrist system. And then he says, this is how we know we are in the last times. And he says, and these antichrists have come out from among us, from among the believers.
That is very specific. Tell me how, in your opinion, the church got off track on the end times.
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to the fact that God says here, he declared the end from the beginning. And so if we don't start right, our end is going to be all out of whack. And when people start with Revelation and they try to develop everything without seeing all the connections to the Tanakh or the Old Testament, they're going to get out of whack. And the early believers wanted nothing to do with the Jewish people because of anti-Semitism. And so immediately, it's almost like the church replanted itself in Rome rather than staying in Jerusalem.
They cut off their foundation.
They cut off the roots, totally, from the roots.
You even said that there was a point where the Apostle John was kicked out of the church.
I said so in the scripture. So many people don't see it, but I can show you in 3 John.
Did you know that?
Did you know the Apostle John? It says in your Bible, the Apostle John was kicked out of the church. All the Jews were kicked out of the church. And it says every Gentile who would not allow the Jews in was also kicked out of the church. It's in every Bible, and people don't see it. It's in 3 John.
The Greek mindset shifted from the Hebrew mindset and caused a lot of damage. As a matter of fact, if you don't have it right on the Jew and Israel, you'll eventually go off on a lot of areas. There's something called replacement theology. What is it and why is it wrong? And that came from the Greek mindset as opposed to the I could say Jewish mindset, but I won't. I'll say as opposed to the biblical mindset.
Oh, exactly. I love it. And see, the problem is the Greek mindset, they see end times as, or prophecy as a checklist. Check, happened, check it off. Yeah. The Hebrew mindset is, it happened, okay, it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. Everything is cyclical. But what happened is, because they cut themselves off from the Jewish roots, the Jews were the ones who knew Torah. All the Greeks knew was Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. So all of their moral foundation, if it's not founded in the Torah, it developed through Greek philosophy.
you had 2 dreams that tell you, are you going to be alive when Jesus returns?
I had 2 dreams where I literally experienced the resurrection, not where I died, but I was alive when the rapture, whatever you want to call it, happens, and I went right through the ceiling. Twice I've experienced I was alive to experience the resurrection of the dead.
I can relate to that, and I'm going to tell you why. Several years ago, I had a visitation from God, and this is what he said 3 times. I think 3 times they talk about 2 witnesses. This is 3 witnesses. I'm coming back soon. I'm coming back soon. I'm coming back soon.
Sid, this is the most exciting time to be alive in history. When we think about, we could have been born in any generation, any time in history, but just like Esther, we need to realize we've been created for such a time as this. This is an unbelievable time. We get to see the coming of the Messiah.
Amandu dega twela gedo Linle po yan chedambi Puedo lem sangin Sando lem kwegin No chalo Linle chavazo